How's it going, guys? Cracked Rack here, and today I want to tell you all the story of how I got fired from being a security guard in a dangerous city. So this story actually takes place right after my top 5 unknowns story, which I recommend you watch, link in description. Essentially, when I was 17 and a half, after months of doing YouTube as a full-time career with no other education qualifications, including no high school diploma, top 5 unknowns essentially fucked me, and I was left with no money, no platform, and no job. I had a few months till I was 18 at the time, and I was expected to move out on my own from my parents' house, so I contacted a family member in Portland, Oregon out of desperation, and I essentially made the move out to their place. And the plan was that I was going to live there for a few months while saving and slaving away at a fast food job so that I wouldn't end up homeless. This did not end up working out, as I was fired from like 5 jobs in a row before just straight up being kicked out of that household. I packed my shit, went to a cafe, researched some apartment listings on Craigslist on my phone, found one full of 18-year-olds, I called their apartment complex up and moved in with them that night, with the stipulation being that I would have the money to pay them rent before rent was due. Now, this story isn't about those people I lived with, but on a side note, they were pretty fucking awful. They were so low rent. It was 2 lesbians and a straight couple, and they would legitimately just fuck and have orgies in their room with the door open at like 3 in the afternoon. They fucked so much, I shit you not, I legitimately started chugging Black Velvet every single night that I lived there because I couldn't deal with their bullshit. Anyway, I pretty much got a job interview lined up the first day I lived there because I was slaving away so hard at getting a job, and this interview was for a company known as Securitas, which is a security company in Portland, Oregon that has a not so great reputation. After a week of grueling interviewing that required I bus out like 2 hours out of my way to get to the offices, I was finally set to do training, which was also like 4 hours away. It was all the way in Vancouver, Washington, and I lived in Beaverton, Oregon. These training sessions were so fucking brutal. It was like 13-hour sessions of watching anti-sexual harassment videos. There was very little actual training on how to conduct yourself in case of danger, but I did manage to complete training. And let's go ahead and skip to a week from the moment I did finish training. So my first day as a security guard, I kinda realized that I was way in over my head. I was expected, as an 18-year-old who looks like this, to go to Portland Skid Row and defend bars from bums trying to do heroin in front of the bars. Now, I'm not trying to be racist here, but the bums in this area were almost exclusively black men who were over 6 feet tall. If they wanted to, they could have easily broke my fucking back by wrapping their hands around my waist. Now, the first few days of work, I was guided by a much older and much stronger man who was the manager of Securitas, and I thought I'd always have a partner to do my patrols with around Portland. But little did I know, he was only going to accompany me for the first 3 days after showing me how to patrol. So day 1 of patrol by myself, and I was pissing my pants. I had to walk in front of like 3 different bars every hour and make sure there weren't any bums doing heroin or giving each other hand jobs on the entrance steps. Now, most of my interactions really just included me telling bums to fuck off, but sometimes I'd actually have some real sympathy for the people I was evicting. For example, there was one kid who was very clearly transgender and scared and homeless, probably as a result of their gender, and instead of being a giant cunt to him, I was like, hey, I get you're probably going through a tough time right now, but you can't be on this property. I know of a place you can go instead. That kind of stuff. However, most of the time, being rude was actually part of the job. There was one encounter I had, though, that was fucking horrible. I still get flashbacks of embarrassment due to it to this day. Essentially, one day I was doing a patrol, and there was a mid-40s Caucasian male wearing a button-up jacket and a flat cap, laying face down on the concrete entrance of a flea market. Now, Portland, Oregon has an incredible heroin issue. It's one of the biggest issues there ever, and I was pretty sure this guy was straight up dead of an overdose. He was laying face down, like I said, and he wasn't responding to anything. I lightly kicked his arm, and no twitch or response or anything. He appeared to be making a puddle of drool with his mouth as well. So I figured he was flat out dead, or at least in the process of dying. I called my boss, and he suggested I call the paramedics, so I called 911, got a fire truck full of medics on the scene, and they were pretty sure this guy was overdosing as well. They were super worried and setting setting up their equipment right there. They started slapping his fucking face around, trying to get a response, and eventually, he revealed himself. He wasn't actually dying at all. He was just drunk and pretending so I would go away. He sprung up from his position, scared the shit out of all of the paramedics, so they backed up, and he pulled out a knife and started swinging at one of the paramedics' throats. Now, I don't know if paramedics are trained to fight. If you're a paramedic watching this and you know how to fight, tell me in the comments if that's a thing, but this paramedic took this motherfucker down. He dead-armed him and tackled him with another EMS, but the guy managed to slither out of the tackle hold and ran away. These paramedics were so pissed off at me for calling them for this dude, and I probably should have just called the cops instead. I put them in so much danger by doing this. They drove off giving me a really pissed off stare. I mean, they might as well have just flipped me off as they drove away. Anyway, a few months into this job, I was not doing so hot. I was known as being one of the dopiest officers there because I was so young and unwilling to actually put myself in danger as a flex officer, and I pretty much overheard the fact that the management was essentially trying to find any excuse they could to sack me. So one day, one of the managers, who's way smarter at manipulation than I am, essentially asked me one day on a patrol we were doing together if I smoked weed, and he was acting like he loved smashing bitches and smoking weed on the weekends. He was just trying to appeal to me so that I'd say yes, and of course I said yes when asked, and he immediately changed his attitude, forced me into the manager's office to take a drug test, which involved me sucking on a fucking weird cotton stick for 5 minutes before it was then put inside this weird cup that told them that I was indeed blazing. If you don't know, it's illegal to blaze as a security officer, and they fired my ass right there. And because of this, I lost my security license, and I can never be a security guard ever again. Not that I'm really too sad about that. So the moral of the story here, I suppose, is never risk your life for a job that doesn't pay you more than McDonald's. I mean, if you have to do it as a job and have no other options, then that's one thing, but if you can avoid it, definitely don't put your life on the line for any sort of minimum wage work. This is a pretty dangerous job. I mean, in that sector alone, there was a security officer a few years back who literally was shot to death just standing outside on 82nd Street of Portland, Oregon. You can look it up, I'm serious. Luckily, Securitas is going under. I fucking hate that company. Because they just don't give a shit about anyone's safety. I mean, they literally wouldn't even give me a bulletproof vest because they said it was probationary. I'm genuinely under the belief that it'd be safer to be in the military because at least in the army, you're given the proper tools to defend yourself and don't have to chase naked meth-smoking bums in small Section 8 housing stairwells for $15 an hour. I think it's super messed up this company hires 18-year-olds. I mean, I'm a small dude, but Jesus, there was some kids there doing dangerous shit that looked about 14. And I think it's so disgusting that these companies get away with just so much shit. Anyway, that's all for this video. See ya.